Welcome to the 2021 Fanfare Launch into Cyberspace. Normally, you'd be visiting the High School of Art and Design's gymnasium, cafeteria, and other spaces around the building to interact and learn about the incredible creations of our young professionals, other creators and innovators in the community. You'd be seeing portfolio reviews. You would be involved in special seminars and workshops. You'd be seeing exciting contests and draw-a-thons. Again, that would have been during a normal school year. The incredible challenges of the pandemic have forced our amazing PTA to take Fanfare and bring it online. So this is our first and hopefully only virtual Fanfare event. And with that said, we still have the vast majority of incredible experiences and learning opportunities for you to be a part of. We're incredibly proud of what our PTA and larger school community have put together and can't wait for you to join us throughout today and the next few days as each one offers unique and special events. Be safe, be well, most importantly, enjoy yourselves and be part of our community.
Hey guys, welcome to Runway Splits, where you will meet Elisa DiNapoli, Hisham Umlil, and Namiko K as they examine the contrast between independent and commercial fashion and how to find your way creatively. Is success only possible through the glittery prism of New York's famous fashion weeks? Tune in as we search for the answer. Hey guys.
Hello.
Lisa, you're still muted, I think. There you go. You're good.
I'm good? Okay.
Yes. Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great.
Good.
Did I say everybody's name correctly?
I think so.
Hopefully. Awesome.
You got it.
And Hisham, I believe, will be joining us later. They're just having some technical difficulties.
Okay. Great. Nice to be here.
Yes, nice to have you here. So what so we're basically talking about trials and tribulations of Fashion Week and all that good stuff. So which one of you would like to go first?
Go ahead.
Coin toss? Fight it out. I'm ready for anything.
Well, did you want to show your presentation first, or should we do like an introduction?
Sure, I can introduce myself and walk through.
Yeah, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So back in the 90s, when I was a naive 24-year-old, I started a luxury children's brand called HM Wogglebug. You can flip to the next slide. So straight out of the gate, I was popular with the press. I think it was because that I came to the world of children's wear with an idea that wasn't popular at the time. I presented a line of dresses that didn't dumb down clothing for children. And you have to remember that this was the Sex and the City 90s, and kids really weren't the focus of clothing or anything else for that matter. So I think I got a lot of attention just bringing fashion for children into the light in a way that was serious and not just like fluffy for kids. I used 100% linen, silks, and fabric that was not really common in American children's wear at the time. My designs were nostalgic, but not really like particular to any one era or another. I can move on to the next slide. I ran my company for 10 years, and I sold to 600 specialty children's wear stores. I was in all the high-end boutiques. I was in Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom's, Saks, Barney's, Bergdorf Goodman, you name it. And although we had like $1 million in sales, tons of accolades, awards, and I had total creative satisfaction. Sadly, I was paying my employees more than I was paying myself. So that's a long time to live on just creativity. So I decided to close my business and get paid for my talent. You can go to the next slide. I stayed in luxury children's wear and became the design director at Best & Company. Best in Company was privately owned by an individual who had very deep pockets. So unlike spending my own money, budget here at Best in Company was unlimited. I was able to shop for fabric in Paris, go to trade shows in Italy, visit factories all over the world. And, we were doing things like making authentic girls' kilts in Scotland. We were making cashmere coats in Italy. We were making these gorgeous leather shoes in Brazil. And the product was just exquisite. Next, you can switch slide.
I'd also like to real quick bring in Hisham is here, so I'm just going to bring him in as well. Welcome to the stream.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone. Hi, Lisa.
How are you? I'd also like to point out that these kids are dressed better than I've ever dressed in my entire life.
They were, and
wildly intimidated right now.
I mean, literally, we were designing like for the best of the best. Like it was the sky was the limit,
Wow.
as far as what I was able to do there. You can move on to the next slide. So then I switched gears and moved on to a more democratic demographic at Baby Gap. What I learned there was the power of volume. So when you're producing tens of thousands of one style and you have a name like Gap behind you, the factories are willing to do anything for you. So literally anything you dream up, you can pretty much make happen. And we always had to make sure that we did had all the basics covered for a good value, but then we also were allowed to do a top tier product where if you wanted to dream up, I want a little girl's handbag that looks like a stuffed animal, but it's a lion, somebody would make that happen for you. It was just pure fun. Like it was a joy to have that. And you could do that and it would sell for $30. So it was really, there was a value there to designing for a more democratic customer. We can go on to the next slide. This is also some of the Gap clothes that I designed while I was there. Next slide. Then my next position was for a designer brand, Tommy Hilfiger. And I say designer in quotes because although when you have a brand as big as Tommy, there's multiple divisions within that brand. And sometimes some of the clothes we were designing retailed less than the Gap clothes. So it's a little deceiving when you're designing for this big brand. Mm-hmm. But what you did have was name recognition. You had name recognition, but then you didn't have the volume like you had at Gap. So that becomes a challenge. As a designer, you're limited to the quantities of fabric and trim that the factories are willing that you can afford to do. So that's a little bit of a challenge. And then there's the other challenge of designing for a brand like Tommy that has a very distinct look. And when I would hire designers for the team, I would always say, we design in a very small box. And the challenge is to make that box look new and different every single time. You can click on to the video. Oh, he's trying to get it, sorry. So anyways, so that's, so that was part of the challenge of designing for a big brand like that. You can click through if the video is not working. We can just go back to it later.
I can toss a question. I mean, did you ever have a design that you really wanted to get through that didn't make it? Like, it seems like,
every day. Every day.
Okay.
All day long. Yeah, all day long. And it's, because it's also when you're designing for a big brand like that, it's not just you.
Right.
Your design team puts forth tons of designs, but then it has to get through, the merchandising team and, the executive team. So it really is, it's a work it's a work that everyone has to approve. So it is very different from when you have your own company and you're like, this is it. This is what I want.
Right.
This is what's going to market. So yeah, it's very different. Since leaving Tommy, I'm now doing some color forecasting for the Color Association. It's a really cool organization. It's been around since 1915. Wow. It was established during World War II when the U.S. fabric mills couldn't travel to Paris to get inspiration for their color. So they decided to come together and pull colors themselves, really forecast themselves. So, and now that's used by not only apparel, but home furnishings and consumer goods. And, you know, it's super cool because what I do is, as part of this job as a designer, I'm looking at, you know, art, what's happening in the art world, what's happening in science, what's happening in the metaverse, street culture, nature, new developments, materials, just to get a sense of, you know, what the colors all these other areas are using and what's influencing color. And then there's a lot of instinct involved when you're looking at color, but if you start sort of tracking what's going on in all these worlds, you start to see similarities, and that's how you sort of can see what's coming in the future as far as color goes. So that's it.
That's awesome. Well, the color thing amazes me just because personally, like I love drawing, I love doing all that kind of stuff, but color stuff eludes me to know. Like I have such a like I can see color, I can see everything just fine, but anytime it's like, you know, having to color in a comic strip or a cartoon or even like making memes for certain things or whatever, I would rather do anything.
Really?
I'm like always like, is it bland? Is it not good? Do they not match? It's like I suck so much.
Oh, that's funny. I'm the opposite. I love color. Like that's usually, I mean, when working for a bigger company, that's usually the starting point is color.
Yeah.
You know, Hashim, you can probably speak to this as well. Like when you're working for yourself, you're sort of limited to what fabrics you can find. So color sort of starts from, for me, when I had my own company, it started from a fabric place, usually.
Yeah. Wow. Actually, that's one of the biggest you know, issues, you know, especially for young designers, is the ability to develop the fabric, because the difference between a brand that is going to become you know, prominent and one that is not is really access to fabrication. And being able to design your own fabric, because you'll have, you know, for example, in 2009, I had this story about the industrialism in America in the early 20th century. And I was inspired by the movie There Will Be Blood by Thomas Paul Anderson. And I really wanted to tell the story of this American spirit, you know, through the prism of struggle, then, you know, progress that allowed so many people to become middle class and upper class. And then, you know, this sort of like feeling that you arrived at a place and now what? And to find fabrics and trims to tell that story in a way that is not gimmicky was a big challenge, because I didn't want to just like, you know, copy, you know, what happened, what I saw through the movie. Like, okay, I put him in aprons, and although that, you know, in the movie, for example, in the story, that was not the case. But like to find like really like fabrics that really gives you that storytelling is very challenging, and then to find them in colors, in a wider range of colors, that's another story. But you know, and then the biggest challenge is that even if you do find, you know, the fabrics, you'll have to get minimum 1,000, you know, yard, and that is for a small brand, for a young designer. Like I can't try that, you know. So maybe like that's why I had this idea, like maybe like certain philanthropies should really work with younger designers, younger brands, to allow them, you know, access, you know, to product development, because you can be a really good designer, but if you don't have the tools to do product development, you know, nothing really happens at the level that you expect. So I'm using this platform to actually, you know, call on, you know, big philanthropies like the Bloomberg organization and others to support, you know, younger designers, and, you know, to allow them to have access, you know, to, you know, fabrics and trims and so on, to certain programs that they can create within their own organizations, because fashion is about storytelling. And And it is really beautiful. It's filmmaking designers doing it before. They cannot do it on their own. So that's my take on the the fabrics and colors, and have the ability to tell your story.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it. Namiko, did you have a question?
I sort of had a question. Like, you guys are talking about like fabric and people that don't have like access to the same amount of resources, and how Lisa, like, when you had your own company, it was a lot more difficult to get like the materials you wanted, or just have like get the amount of like profit you deserved for all the work you were doing. I think this is sort of related to like more modern age. How do you guys feel about like sustainability in fashion, and do you think that's like part of like your work when you design? Because I know that like requires some form of like reducing, or just like thinking in a specific way so it doesn't produce as much waste. How do you guys feel about sustainability, and does it like take a play in your work?
I can thank you. Yeah. When it comes to sustainability, I think there is this conversation that is a bit flawed about it. People say like, oh, sustainability through certain fabrics. I think sustainability has to come from having clothing made from quality, have people having less, obviously, less clothing, but better quality. But the problem is affordability, and how do you get that? Designers, they have to go through a long process to get to that profitability, and it's very, very challenging. So when it comes to sustainability, I think you have to separate like clothing that is designed for utilitarian use, and there are a lot of companies that do that. And designers, they're about dressing you in the most beautiful form of clothing, using beautiful fabrics and trims, on the top of the design. So they're by creating this beautiful clothing, they're telling you the story that you want to hold on to that clothing. You want to cherish it. You want to like use it, for as long as you want, because we make it in a way that should last, as long as you want and you can care for. Bigger companies stepping into the market, and they make this cross between fashion and utilitarian, and they dominate the airwaves, and it becomes like, how do you compete with Zara or H&M when you're a younger designer trying to sort of tell this story about sustainability, where the consumer is really drawn to affordability. And then it's like, it's a dance. Like, I could go get a blouse for $50 from Zara. Why should I pay $500 to get it from,
I think it's it's twofold. Like we will have to, as an industry, address this issue. I mean, we cannot keep going in the direction we're going and still have a planet to call home.
Right.
So I think it's a mindset shift, right? It's back to what you're saying. Like, I think consumers really, really, really need to understand that they need to buy quality and have it for a longer period of time. And so there'll be a reduction. There should be hopefully a reduction in the amount of fast fashion that's out there, that's thrown away constantly, and creates, even up to the point where it's created, there's less, there's so much waste from start to finish in the fashion industry. Mm-hmm. And then if you're creating a fast fashion, something that somebody's wearing for one season and getting rid of, the consumer's not even, they're making it worse. They're adding to the problem. So I think there has to be a shift in the attitude of the consumer.
How do you make the quality affordable though? Because that's, I mean, obviously the better stuff lasts longer, but that's kind of how our society winds up keeping people poor, because they make them buy the inexpensive stuff because it's the cheap stuff, and then it breaks down faster, and then they just have to keep spending money, and that's how they're kind of stuck in that situation. While everything that lasts forever, I mean, it's more expensive. So how do you kind of manage that? Or both, that's a question for both of you if you want to take a stab at it.
I mean,
same time though.
I don't want to be hard on the consumer, but this is a consumer, responsibility.
Mhm.
As you see, for example, like all these collaborations between H&M and designers, they're doing it in a way to continue to pull the consumer to cheaper goods, and the consumer, all that. So you have a collaboration with H&M by H&M by so and so. Of course, it's attractive, and people like they're stuck, in the rhythm. What I try to say to customer, and I have, primarily my business, I'm designing wardrobes for private clients. First of all, I go to the client's house and I'm looking at the closet. The physical space is not conducive to have all these clothes. Very few people in this world have closet space that, will allow them to have all the clothing they want. So I think everyone should either become a stylist or need a stylist to come in and curate, their lifestyle. You buy clothing because you have a point of view about your life. There are places you're going, people you're meeting, things to do. So you have to think about clothing in terms of like, what do I need it for, and then how do I wear this together? Like you can have a full jacket that you can layer it with a beautiful chunky sweater, and you don't need to add another top coat or another heavier jacket. So it starts with loving the things that you buy first. I think you have to walk back and then start to buy things that you really love. And then once you do that, you're gonna start to find pieces that are gonna marry those pieces and become a cohesive point of view about who you are as a person, as an artist yourself. I consider consumers, people that wear clothes, that want to wear fashion, as artists themselves, and they have to, find that artist in themselves. And I think from there we will get to sustainability much faster if we, if we don't really get attuned to who we are as people. And
Did that answer your question at all?
Yeah, I kind of. I mean, I think I understand what he was saying basically. It's just one of those, it's just interesting because like the spectrum of like people that can afford a certain thing as opposed, like while you're talking about sustainability is always different. I agree. It'd be great if I had a stylist, that'd be amazing. I wouldn't be wearing t-shirt and jeans everywhere, I guess. But
be your friend, you have them with you.
Yeah.
I think
I like it.
I think that was really important what you said about like people should really love what they buy, and that's where the quality aspect comes in. I think that's a really important message, and like especially with like closets are usually not that big as like people need them to be, because people like buy so much clothes for like the season. You said. Let me think. Wait, let me read my questions.
That's what I was saying. Like, I think it's we have to retrain people how to think about their wardrobes, right? Yeah. And that way, just to understand you don't need as much as we've been conditioned to just buy and buy and buy without even thinking.
Yeah.
And it's really just about like being thoughtful about what you're buying.
Also sort of related again, like, do you guys think you design for like a specific audience, and like what inclines you to design towards that audience?
Well, as a designer, first of all, you need to know who the customer is. And once you design for that customer, you might end up having a different kind of customer who comes into your sphere. And then you're like, oh, okay, I did not intend, for this to happen. I want to do this type of people. So then you will go into, is this like a branding messaging that you need to, attend to? Or, maybe like, there you have to shift course and start to try to think about the customer who actually wants you rather than the customer you want. So, when you design, you're gonna go into like, the daily life of that customer. You wanna think about like, where they live, how they live, what they do in life. For me as an example, so I can be a little bit more particular, I've always, been inclined to design people who are in the creative fields, and art directors and so on. And so you gotta imagine, how they live, and that's so you start, designing for them initially, as how you want them, and then you have to adjust, what is the trend, what's going on, and you have to sort of like, play with what they're telling you as well. So you have to listen to your customer as well as thinking a direction.
I think it's really important. I think you can't be successful if you don't know who your customer is. I think you always have to sort of set out, even if it's an imaginary customer at first, it's the person you want to dress, right? So you have to. I think it's really important to at least have an idea of who you want to dress, whether it's a man, woman, child, a dog. I mean.
Dog fashion.
You have to understand, you have to understand, and imagine, as Hisham was saying, like what their life is like. Where are they going to be wearing these clothes? Why are they going to be wearing these clothes? Why do they want to buy that from you? I think that's really important. It also gives you a point of view as a designer, to sort of know who you're addressing.
Yeah.
And also be mindful that, especially for younger designer entering, the market, they want to have their own brand. Like you may have in your mind, this glamorous woman that you want to dress, and you have the skills and you have this, the talent and so on to create a lifestyle, clothing for that lifestyle. But then you come up against, the bigger names, like the Balenciaga or the Dior and Ralph Rucci's of the world, and then like you're competing in a market that all markets tend to be saturated. So you have to figure out like, okay, who you are, but then who are going to be your competition, and you have to be very sort of like mindful and just sit down and listen to people around you. You gotta get people like Lisa Di Napoli to come and tell you like, yeah, that, I mean, you cannot sell that dress for $5,000. I mean, a woman who will buy it, she's probably going to spend that on Balenciaga. That's so there is a dance there, that you have to learn, and you gotta have people around you to show you the ropes.
Yeah. I also just, we're in a pandemic. It's pretty bad. How does the pandemic kind of affect how you work, or just like what you work with, I guess?
So it's been really interesting because I think the lack of travel has really forced me as a designer to look at what's around me closer. So whereas before, I was really reliant on travel as inspiration, whether that was going to Paris or, Japan or, wherever it was, because when you travel, your eyes are sort of like wide open because it's a new environment, it's a new place, and you're sort of taking in all this newness. But when travel stopped, it was kind of like, oh, well, now what am I going to do? It's been a real pleasure actually to sort of rediscover what's close by and be inspired by things that are really right here in our city, which is full of amazing inspiration.
Yeah.
For me, like I can attest to the same struggles as Lisa described, beautifully. One thing that the pandemic, did, it gave us time, to sort of like sit down a little, and reflect, have enough time to sort of like look within. One thing personally that happened to me, and I see it happening, across the board. I start to actually, become an avid reader. Before I will read a book, on the way, to work, on the subway, here and there on the lunch break, and but half an hour before you go to bed, did not have enough time to, really immerse myself in stories in a continuous way. With the pandemic, it was like I'm reading all day, and I'm discovering these people that were there as an inspiration. I just visually cannot see them, but I read about them, and they become a visual presentation and manifestation of the stories. So there's all these stories that I would love to tell if I could only get the money, all the fabrics I want, and that I want to tell this.
Tell them now. We'll just go into the next few hours. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I want to tell that there is this beautiful Spanish novelist. Sadly, he died of cancer this past summer. Mr. Zafón, Carlos Ruiz Zafón. And I read all the books that he had written. Again, sadly, he passed away, and ended that beautiful career. And there's this stories about the Spanish Civil War. And within them, the Spanish flu, the pandemic, that obviously started in America in a way, in Philadelphia, and it spread to the rest of the world. And there is this, stories that, the pandemic allowed me to, to have the time to really savor, that I will be bringing with me as I go along. And so, yeah, the pandemic just sort of gave us, at least for me, a time, to look for other ways to be inspired, to pay attention to other ways that you can be.
Definitely. Also, Lisa, you talked earlier about your like child wear company. So how big was that company? Was that was an independent brand, but how big, how large? I don't know. Yeah.
So it was a small company in terms of employees. There were at the most 6 of us. Myself, my business partner, we had a admin who did everything. She was just jack of all trades. And then we had one production person. I had one assistant who also helped me with patterns. And then we had a sample sewer. So it was a really tight team. And then we grew the business, we were distributed in lots of places. So as far as, but still considered a very small business in that regard. Some of the, if we cut 1,000 pieces of one style, that was probably a really good, or 1,500 of one style, that was a really good style for us. So it was the same struggles as we were talking. Goes back to the same struggles we were talking about earlier. Then you're kind of you're looking for a fabric that's available in small quantities because you only need 500 yards or 1,000 yards. So you kind of go back to, I like to say, being scrappy, where you're kind of like, okay, I can maybe, find this fabric and buy it all up front, because there are people who will sell off fabric from other companies. You kind of come up with creative ways to get what you want.
Yeah. Same with you, Hisham. How big is your company? Because I think you began in 2005. How big is your company, and how does it work?
It's very small. I intended, to have it small for a long time, and I'll give you a reason. In today's world, everybody wants to have a company, and wants to have a brand, and everyone calls themselves a brand from the get-go. For me, growing up in Casablanca, Morocco, I understood, that things do take time. You have to see your brand, beyond your lifetime. If you really think you want to build a brand, you have to see it beyond your lifetime. So you have to take your time. When I growing up in Morocco, my inspiration for fashion was obviously the French couture houses, because those are the ones that will really have, more than the Italians, the ones that really were omnipresent in our culture. So when you look at these histories, these brands took 50, 100 years to be what they are right now, to be called a brand. Take, for example, Prada, the Italian house. Mario Prada, was 1929 when he built Gucci, when he built Prada, and it was just a small leather goods. And then the Americans came in and they discovered him, but it took like till 1992 when the granddaughter Miuccia Prada came to the company and decided that we're gonna have this new expression, and and even her, it took her a while before it became what Prada is right now. So I wanted it to be small, and I continue to operate in that fashion. And once I find myself in a place where I feel like I have the right infrastructure, I gotten to what I think it's time to depart to the new phase with becoming more international and more global, then I will do that. But when consumers will look at the history, they're gonna say, oh, it's been around since 2005. This is not like a newcomer just wanted to sell us on his vision. You have to build a history, a legacy before you go on to claim yourself on the international stage and want it to be a big company. I would be happy if my son take it to the next stage and Umlil, like in 2050, becomes a household name, because the brand is about how I feel and the message I want to share. It's really not about me making clothing, trying to be the it boy for a moment and trying to make a living. It's more of a sentimental, spiritual point of view. So yes, I'm not ashamed that it's still very small compared to other designers who have started at the same time as me. But I've always intended it, to be small till I think, it is time for me. And also, brand and branding is about connecting in the history of the world. So sometimes it's just not your time. You can scream all you want. You can, it's just not your time. Your message doesn't resonate with people there. And so if you feel strongly about your message, you have to continue to operate till you hit, that. I'm like a surfer. I'm patient in the middle of the ocean, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna wait till I find that big wave, and I'm gonna, But if you have a good surfboard, you're gonna get there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good metaphor for that. What else should I ask? So this whole panel is based off the idea of New York Fashion Weeks and stuff. So how does that ever play into your work? And do you think something like that is crucial for success as a brand?
Lisa, me?
I mean, I think it's a loaded question. I think that it's designers need a place to showcase their work. It's unfortunate that it's become such a huge investment to do that. And it's also, I think, unfortunate that it's become, like a circus sideshow, whereas, the original intent was for somebody solely to show their collection to the buyers and the press. So that's how I feel on the one hand. On the other hand, it's good for the economy. It's good for the momentum of fashion design. So I think it's a double-edged sword. And when I was at Tommy, as you probably have heard or know, they play in and out of the fashion weeks. They sometimes do them, sometimes don't. Sometimes they do men's fashion weeks. Sometimes they only do women's. And it was always because of the timing of what was happening in the marketplace, and then they decided to do it really present their fashion collection as see now, buy now. So instead of doing it, a year ahead, they were sending down the runway what people could buy immediately. And there is something to that, I think, for it because of what it became, because it became this sort of like media, sensation. Why not use that to sell clothes that are available right now? So it's interesting.
Fashion Week, obviously it's a mess. It's a mess for designers who cannot afford it and who shouldn't, do it. I have participated in Fashion Week for, a good 5-6 years. You have to go through that pain, for sure. It's a celebration, it used to be a celebration of designers with the retailers and so on. It was a beautiful time for everybody in the industry to get together, designers to show their work. But then more people, become interested in fashion, in showing, in becoming a company and having labels and so on. New York Fashion Week is not as strict as, let's say, Milan or Paris. So anybody can come and show. I think, for Fashion Week to become more relevant in New York, I think it should, I'm not being, discriminating against, folks, but it should be, a little bit more restricted, because it's just crazy for stylists and retailers and photographers, and it's almost impossible. It's like attending 6 weddings a day. How are you going to do that? I mean, just imagine you get like all these invitations and then all these weddings, and you're like, oh my goodness, I have Lisa's wedding, I have Nanika's wedding, to whose wedding I'm gonna go to, and it's really like a process. You gotta go to, it's a certain time, the door. You gotta go through security. You gotta sit, and then the next thing, like models who are late, and the show is running late, and then you have the next wedding in like 30 minutes, and people
all the way across town.
I just always tried to decide which friends I thought were going to get divorced quicker. I'd be like, they're not going to make it. They're going to make it.
So what we want to do is that I think there should be a fashion week for upcoming talent. And I think the city can work with the CFDA and organize that. And the city can subsidize some of the cost. And then for the upcoming talent, I think it will be fantastic. You know why? Because you will have some junior buyers that will attend, the shows. They don't have the senior buyers from Bergdorf and Barney's and all these other retailers. But then the coolest thing that could happen is that the guest list are not the retailers and the celebrities and stuff, are like young people, fashion students, coming and attending, support each other, and then you have like parties afterwards in town, and like you can do a lot of fun with Fashion Week if you separate the upcoming designers and let them have their time, and it will be really fun and fantastic. And then the ones that have already established businesses, they have business to get to, and just leave that side. And I think the city can benefit, greatly, from tourism and so on. Imagine like students from, Savannah, Georgia, and IDM, in San Francisco and LA, and other, fashion schools, including worldwide. They're attending, New York Youth Fashion Week. Oh, that would be really fun and fantastic. I would love to be in it, because I think it would be much more fun.
Let's work on that together. Let's make that happen.
Pitch it to the CFDA and the city, because I think that will be just like really fun, and it gives the young designers the platform to shine without the pressure that an actual fashion week, presents.
Yeah, and if it's more equitable for everyone, for the young designers to participate, you're going to see more talent rise. You know, you'll see that talent rise. Whereas, you know, right now it's so cost prohibitive that you're only seeing people who have backers or funding, or, you know, so you're not seeing all the best talent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, Fashion Week, as you know, it's about, like, first of all, getting a lighting engineer to light your room properly. You need like a music, you know, person to do your playlist. You know, you're gonna have to get like the models, the face of the brand. I competed one year with Tommy Hilfiger for one model. I had him first. I had him first, and he was like the big model at the time, and he really wanted to do my show. But then the casting director at Tommy Hilfiger was like, "No, I want that." And our shows were like within the hour from each other. I'm like, who's gonna get, you know, that model?
Yeah.
And, you know, you want to build your whole, like, you know, look around, you know, that face so you can tell your story. It's impossible. So, Lisa, you guys owe me, you know, from.
I'll talk to that casting director.
Well, I look forward to seeing that alternative fashion week in the future. And just a lighter question, like, what do you think? What's your favorite part of what you do? Just like, what's your favorite what's your favorite part of what you do, or like, what's the best thing you've created in your opinion?
I mean, I have to say, at the end of the day, like, I'm a storyteller. That's the part I like the best. Like, I like coming up with a concept and seeing it through to the garment stage. Like, I think that, you know, it takes all my creativity, and it just, there's nothing better when you actually pull all the pieces, you know, the fabric, the trim, the, you know, the model, the, you know, whatever it is, and you pull it all together and you see it come to life. There's something really nice about that. And that somebody on the other side is like, oh, I get it. You know, it's about this, or, you know, they understand what you were the story you were trying to tell. What about you? What about you? What's your favorite part?
My favorite part about, you know, the work is seeing that I contribute to an industry that employ, you know, some really, really special people. Like, when you're a designer and you're doing this work, you're not doing it alone. And so knowing that you are the spokesperson of these people, and that's what, like, I've always, you know, advocated for, especially to the media, if, you know, the press, the fashion press, if and when they listen to you, is you, fashion designers, are the spokespeople for a wide range of artisans and people who do extraordinary work in behind the curtains, basically, and they're not seen by the general public. We take the credit, obviously, when credit is due, but for me, it's that satisfaction that I am representing all of them. You know, from the pattern maker to the cutters to the sewers to the fabric, you know, designers, you know, to the trim designers and suppliers, you know, to everybody else within your team and the people that you work with, the stylists, you know. It's a beautiful feeling to know that you are representing, you know, this wider range of talents coming under, you know, one roof. And my message continue to be like, from my satisfaction, is that you have to stay. We have to do it because there are so many other people that are behind it, and they are incredible, and they deserve, you know, our support. So for the consumer, when you're sitting there thinking about buying a product, don't just think that you're buying it from me. as a brand, whether it's a Tommy Hilfiger or an O'Neill or whoever else, think about buying it from an ecosystem that cannot collapse, that should not collapse, because it is not only an economic, engine, but also an artistic heritage that the world, has. So the consumer buys, but it also invests in our humanity and our civilization. Don't think about clothing just as utilitarian, even if it's a $50 shirt compared to a $500 one. Know that you're contributing to a larger, audience out there, a larger infrastructure of people that deserve your support, and you can feel better about wearing, the clothing at the end.
Yeah, I think that's great. And okay, I gotta think of your question to ask.
I have a question I could ask. So I have two questions, but one, I love to know this about people. Like, even if when I do interviews and stuff like that, basically, if you, knowing everything you know now, if you could talk to yourself when you started, what's the one piece of advice or like a heads up you would give yourself about the thing you do now? I'll go Lisa first.
Invest in real estate.
You're like Google, Yahoo.
No, I always say that's my one regret in life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't invest in real estate.
Not enough Bitcoin, honestly, right? Yeah. Crypto, Elon, come on.
But what would I tell myself? It's just fashion. Okay. There were so many. And especially, working as a design director and a VP of design, you take on the responsibility of your team, mm-hmm. And for me, kind of back to what you were saying, Hisham, like to me, that's a big responsibility. Like, I'm responsible for the livelihoods of my team, for the creative satisfaction of my team, for, making sure that they're heard and seen and, understood and feel like they're contributing to the process. And I always take that very seriously. And sometimes well, you need to step back. It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to be so, consumed with all that. Awesome.
What about you, Sham?
I will add to Lisa. It's not only her story, mine, and I have a friend of mine who's a designer, and they've been in the New York scene since the 80s, and they have done amazing shows and so on. And one thing, when I talked to him, he was like, "Oh man, I should have bought that townhouse on 20th Street. Now it's $1 million. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on showroom rents and shows and so on." I can add to Lisa's. I will be on Lisa DiNapoli's list of real estate. But what I would tell myself, going back to 2006. So I'll tell you this. This is actually a real story and a fun story. So I was designing for this artist, a Greek American artist, and he had a major, audience here in New York and globally. He was a painter, and every time he goes out, to parties, people will ask him "What are you wearing?" And he will be like, "Umdir." It's like, "Who? Umdir? This is the Moroccan designer based in New York." "Oh, I never heard of him." "Oh no, he does this, and that." One evening, I was at home, and I get a text from him. He said, "I'm coming over to your house," and I'm like, "Oh, what's going on here? Is he or something?" And then the next thing, he goes, "I'm gonna do a show for you, and with you. Your clothing gets a lot of attention. Let's do it." I happen to have a plan already going to Morocco on vacation. So I went, to Morocco on vacation, And then my assistant, he worked behind the scene and got my assistant to put things together, got a PR person, had this really amazing place uptown called Fredericks. And he put infrastructure for my first show that I was not even ready for.
Wow.
And I had the most amazing attendance. I invited some of my friends, and they were like, yeah, whatever, Hisham is going to do a show in New York during fashion. And then the next thing, they're coming to the show, and they're like, cars line up. They're like, what is this, a Versace show or something? Like, they were amazed. Anyway, story short, I had great attendance. It was incredible. The next thing, I had an offer to do fall 2007 at the Core Club. And so my story and the answer to you is what I would tell myself, don't let people drive you. Don't let, you can see opportunities, but don't grab them as they come. Really think about these opportunities. They might sound exciting, which was in my case, but then I ended up having people just defining me left and right, oh man, this is the next so-and-so. I didn't have the chance to define myself first.
Wow.
And that was exciting. Trust me, I had a lot of fun. I met some of the most influential people in the art scene in New York, but they drove the message for me. I didn't get the chance to build it and drive it the way I want to. So that's one thing younger designers have to really be careful about. Don't get too excited. Sit, think, and then you can manage your opportunities. Don't let them swallow you.
Great. That was great from both of you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Namiko, did you want to wrap it up?
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know what to say.
Oh, okay. I'll do that then. No. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Yeah, no, well, listen, thank you so much, both of you, for coming on. It's been a true blast. And I've learned a lot because I don't know too much about the fashion thing. Like I said, t-shirt, jeans, leather jacket, then I go on stage. That's it. But it was great. Thank you so much for your time and coming in here. And also, please text FMNYC to 44-321 to donate. And also, you can donate on the website, fanfarenewyorkcity.com. So thank you so much. And great job, Namiko. That was awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you all.
Yes.
Good to meet you, Lisa.
Nice to meet everyone. Thank you.
Nice meeting you guys.
Nice
Take
to
care.
meet you guys.
Bye.
Yeah, the event that people are enjoying, it was produced by the High School of Art and Design PTA, which is this amazing group of parents. Many of them are working professionals in the creative fields themselves. And so we did tap into those filmmakers and graphic designers to help us. But basically, they're just really driven to give as much as they can to the students of the high school, coming from every neighborhood in New York, from Staten Island to way out in Queens to the Bronx. And our population of students also runs the gamut of economic background, so that there are some kids who have a full setup, really fancy computer at home, and there are some that are working mostly at school on the school computers and things like that. We need funding for every kid to get them the best stuff possible to realize their dreams. They're entrepreneurs. They want to be in the creative fields. They want to be working like these amazing professionals, and we need donations to make that happen from everybody who's watching. This is a great slide because it shows, how much your donation could really mean in reality. A dress form. Everybody in our fashion design major needs a dress form if they're going to be able to sew at school and make a proper garment. Can you donate that? That's where we are. Miguel, your son graduated. I know that it was really a place of experimentation for him, but also like finding his people, kind of.
Exactly. Yes, that's a very strong part of the I guess what threads everything together here. And if you've been watching these panels the last 2 days, that is something that you see the kids here. I mean, you're going to see right now, as soon as we go away and we stop this little pledge drive, you're going to meet 3 students who, are knee deep in their work, but yet they all come from different, boroughs, experiences and all that. And yet they come here and it all merges. And I know, speaking to alum, and teachers, of course, that have taught and continue to teach there at the school, it's one of those, I guess the driving points about it is that the commonality is that they're creative, and yet they're all coming from different parts of just like you're saying, the economic strata, the cultural strata, the different viewpoints and all that. And if that is exactly what we need, right, is just have these people fostering this creative energy and getting something that's really great out of it. One of my old stories is that regular schools, not to downplay funding for them, but if this is a math or science school, you're just buying more graph paper, more pencils. I know that's not really what it is, but still. But here, for art, there's inks, there's paints, there's papers, there's tablets, there's light boxes, there's all sorts of things. And on top of that, there's college trips, there's helping the seniors with their graduation and so on. So we're trying to make a very, very strong pitch to everyone out there. If I was smart, I would be putting up the website. Here's the fanfare.nyc.com, and we also have it available for folks who don't want to type a couple of characters. They can just text using their supercomputer that's in their hip pocket.
FFNYC.
There you go, John.
44-321.
There you go. So we don't want to hold up anymore. I know the Joanna, if you want to have anything else.
Just that, not to go too strongly, but I think that there are so many people out there saying, I want to make a difference in the world. And this is an urban high school serving kids from all different backgrounds and economic stratas, and from all over the city. You have an opportunity to make a difference in the world and encourage and inspire future designers, architects, fashion designers, and photographers, filmmakers. And so this is your time to go into your wallet, get out the credit card with the highest, that you have the most money on, that you can put the most money on, and make a donation. This is the time to do it.
That's great.
And if you donate to just those math and science high schools, you're just going to wind up with an Elon Musk trying to send your kids to space. You know what I mean? You don't want that. You want them creating stuff here on Earth. Beautiful landscapes and pictures and drawing and art. You don't want them going to Mars.
And then pack it into the space shuttle that goes up to Mars.
Yes,
exactly.
A time capsule, if you will, something safer.
But that's it. I mean, you're using designs every day. We're wearing it. We're interacting with it. We've got it on our wall. This is what makes your life richer, and you have the opportunity to make it happen.